You're listening to the Kingdom Leadership Advantage podcast with Dionne van Zyl. Today, Dionne sits down with Jenny Taylor, Director of Operations at Brilliant Perspectives, to explore her journey of kingdom-minded leadership. From reframing challenges as gifts from God to building a culture of trust and innovation, Jenny shares transformative insight for leaders at every stage. Let's dive in.
Hey, Jenny, it's so good to have you. I'm looking forward to this podcast. I know we've spent a lot of working together a couple of years, and I know at the moment you are running the team at Brilliant Perspectives. Tell us a little bit about that journey. Just introduce yourself to the listeners, and we'll go from there.
Well, as you know, my name is Jenny Taylor, and I am the Director of Operations at Brilliant Perspectives. I've worked here for about 13 years now, and you said we've worked together for a couple of years, but Dionne, it's been well over a couple of years now. It's been 4 years, right? Going on 5. So yeah, so a long while. I ended up here at Brilliant Perspectives in a roundabout way. I was at a point in my life where, the Lord and I were just having this discussion about where I could be in my life. What could I do in my life? And I was convinced that he told me that I was never going to work again. So my heart at that time, 14 plus years ago, was for at-risk youth. I really wanted to do something with at-risk youth. And I was going into juvenile hall and speaking to the youth there, just relationally engaging with them and hearing their stories. And so I had my job was working at a church in the accounting department and as an assistant to the children's leader. And along with, leading a ministry team. And he said, Jenny, you're not going to work again. And I said, I'm all for that plan. I just felt like my time there was done. And, I needed to move on so that the person who was going to come in, there would be space for them. So I quit my job. My children were still at home at that time. They were still school age. So spent several months with them, completely redid our whole eating plan.
This one does.
Yes.
You have time.
When you have time. Yes,
Right.
We were all benefiting from that. And I received a call from Teresa Cook and said, hey, I'd like a bookkeeper. And I hear you can help me. And my answer was, thank you, but no thank you. I'm not a bookkeeper. And long story short, through many conversations of telling her no thank you, went to meet her and said, I'm not a bookkeeper, found out what she needed was an administrative person, which I love administration. And I especially love doing administration for people who find it difficult or draining to them. And so I really felt impressed at that time that the Father told me to continue with her because we were partnering for something much bigger together, that this was just the entryway. So I did. And then a few months later, Graham was in need of a personal assistant, and he and Teresa had a conversation, and I ended up going to work with Graham as his personal assistant. And that lasted for, I think, about 2 weeks, because as soon as I got into the office, at the time he had 2 businesses, Brilliant Bookhouse and Brilliant Perspectives. And the managers of Brilliant Bookhouse asked me if I would be an office manager. So I quickly became, because of this administration that I so love, I got into the office and I started putting things into place, and they saw that and thought that the office would benefit from me being an office manager. So I took over really administrating both of those businesses until about a year later, we moved here to Santa Barbara. And then you came on in 2019. And so that's the rest of the story there.
Yeah, and then we started working together. And I've watched your growth from office manager to what you are today as the director of operations, which is a euphemistic term in our world, because that really you are running the company. You do lead the team. at Brilliant, and which of course frees me up to do what I do. But I really wanted to focus a little bit for people to, get an insight into your own personal journey with the Lord. We talk about this kingdom journey and how that informs our leadership style. I know you live a very integrated life. To you, your relationship with the Lord and your business life are one and the same thing. Just a little bit about how that came to be and how did you learn to be in this mode?
Sure. I love how Simon Sinek talks about leadership, and he uses it as he uses the analogy of going to the gym. And when you start out at the gym, the first time you go, you don't reach your goal in that time, but it's a
Right.
series of moments that
Yeah.
build one upon another in the practice of that leads you to where you're at. And so for me, that really is what happened. And I can remember a specific time, and I've talked about this very openly. I was at work and I was having a really rough day. Just having a really rough day. And you know how when you have a rough day, everything, your countenance, your heart becomes heavy, your countenance becomes heavy. You wear it like it's a jacket. And I did not want people to think, oh, she's having a rough day when they look at me. That just wasn't the impression that I wanted to give them. But I also didn't want to I want to give an authentic expression of who I am. And so I just remember that, there was just this quiet, soft impression from the Lord about, well, then don't have a bad day. And I said, you're right. You're absolutely right. Holy Spirit is such a genius, because what I found is the more that I confessed that, man, this is a terrible day. I'm having a very bad day. Then I got what I was looking for, because I declared with, that I was going to have a bad day. So I did have a bad day. But when I had a day that had challenges that I got to encounter his goodness and his kindness in the middle of, it became something that I looked forward to. And I looked forward to finding. And so I just practiced it at that level, it just, on a basic day to day. And it flows in and out through all areas of my life. But it really started with seeing him as a friend, And so I don't just occasionally talk to a friend, or I don't see a friend, well, I might see a friend every 3 months, but they don't leave my heart and mind. And he's one that sticks closer than a brother. So why not constantly have
Yeah.
that fellowship?
Yeah, I love that. I love that reference you made to Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
That is such a good analogy. You don't go to the gym, spend 8 hours in the gym on day one and go, well, that didn't help.
Yeah.
I don't have the fantastic physique. So you go to the gym and you work out and then nothing happens. And you come back, do it again and nothing happens. And there's no change. And, you did nothing. And then one day you look up and go, hang on, we've moved. I think leadership is such a great analogy for how leadership is. You brush your teeth every day and you say, well, that didn't help. So it's the series of inconsequential, seemingly no progress moments. But I wondered if in all of those moments there wasn't a pivotal moment for you in that journey that for you really impacted your approach to leadership.
There's so many. And I knew you were going to ask me that question. So I came prepared. I think that I saw a lot how leaders did not lead well in my life. And so I was really aware that a I had made a decision that I don't want to be a leader because it was done really poorly. And the reason I didn't want to be a leader was not because I didn't love people or want to lead people. It's that I would never want to intentionally inflict the damage that a lot of leaders inflict. And so that was my reason for holding it at arm's length. And there have just been, a series of moments, with the Father's heart towards me that has led me to the place of partnership with him and seeing myself the way that he sees me. And so if I am not stepping into the role of leadership that he's created for me, this space of leadership that he has created for me, and that a lot of times in the past, I've received that position because of my administrative skill sets.
Right.
If I'm not stepping into that space and owning it in partnership with him, then I'm not living a life as big as he intended. I'm making myself smaller. And if Jesus is in me, then I'm making Jesus smaller as well in my life, making him smaller in my life and his impact in my life. And so it really was becoming aware, which is a huge part of it, right? Becoming aware of what leadership could be. And it started with a book from the Arbinger Institute called An Outward Mindset. And I read this book several years ago, and in there's just stories about leaders who showed kindness and how it changed the trajectory of leading and how it changed the trajectory of an outcome for the people that they were leading. And that really did get me, that really changed my perception on what leadership could be. And I became brave enough to begin to occupy the space that he was opening up for me.
Yeah. I mean, you're touching on such a large subject. I think for many believers, maybe I don't want to say specifically ministries, people who've been in ministry. I think we think a lot of times that because, we use the analogy of upstairs, downstairs, upstairs being the spiritual, the kingdom realm, downstairs, the natural realm. I think a lot of times we think because somebody, is a great preacher or teacher or has tremendous revelation, because we love them and they're really good at, caring and feeding for the people they lead in a spiritual sense, we automatically assume they're also good leaders. And I think there's an expectation that sometimes doesn't get met. And we see a lot of people being hurt, or even burnt out in those scenarios. And it occurs to me that, pastors, spiritual leaders should be the best leaders. Who better to know how to lead and inspire people? Should be them, should be the business leaders knocking on the church doors saying, hey, tell us how you did that. But I think that is not the general experience, after 30-something years of being around. And, and the question is, well, where would have the spiritual leaders learned it? They wouldn't have learned it at, Bible school or wherever, in a seminary. So the question then is, did you have a moment where something happened that for you was either maybe a really negative thing and you said, I never want that, or I want nothing to do with it? Because you said early on, that something happened or you got an impression, I don't want to be a leader. And I think this is a fairly common thing. I don't think it's unique, that response. So was there something that really flipped you from maybe a negative viewpoint? And then I want to dig into the whole thing you're talking about partnership in a minute. But was there something that for you anchored it and said, I don't want that. I don't want to have that in my life.
Oh, yes. And it was just, it's, we talk about this a lot, right? Managing your power. And I think that's the thing is leaders don't know how to manage their power. And so when they say or do something, it can come across really loud to the person that they're speaking to. And while they don't recognize the power that comes with it, it can be very detrimental to the people that they're leading. And so for me, in one of the moments, there were several, I don't think I ever met a leader before you coming on that I thought, oh my goodness, I could be like them. That was the issue, Dionne, is that all I saw of leaders was what I didn't want to be. So I didn't know what the alternative was to that. And there was one final instance that happened so many years ago that solidified, okay, no, this is not a good thing. But it also solidified, as funny as this sounds to pair these two things up, it solidified my identity in God. So in the situation that I was in, someone was my boss that did not like me. And I don't know why. It's irrelevant now. I know that it's irrelevant now. But at the time, did not like me. And there was not anything that I could do that was going to change their mind, or that they would appreciate about what my contribution to the organization was. And there's a whole lot more to it than that. I mean, a whole lot more to that. I got accused of things that were not true, and ended up having to have a mediation with this leader, with an outside person. That's how. And the sad thing about it is that the person that was the leader of that person didn't step in. They had no awareness that this was going on. So it seemed like it was just institutionalized in that organization, when it was actually one person. And so that's where my identity got solidified in God, to where I came to the point of, Father, it only matters what you think about me, not what anyone else thinks about me. And that's what actually gave me the strength to say, oh, I don't have to submit to this. And I quit. I quit that position.
It's interesting because I think it's so common that people in teams often don't feel safe. And you would think that a kingdom leader would create one of the safest environments, because we have, the Lord is our anchor. And but it would seem that this doesn't get taught. It feels to me like there's almost a segregation of spiritual truths and leadership truths. It's like, well, leadership is sort of the worldly stuff you have to do, and it's like bookkeeping, as you use the analogy. And then but we have all this great revelation, and we're learning all this, but that's not an integrated space. The upstairs downstairs. To me, when people feel unsafe, we've created this saying, what we call the first rule of leadership. When something goes wrong in the organization, right? What am I being as a leader? That this is the result, not why are these bad people not doing what I tell them? They never listen. And getting frustrated with your team, you're the one who's creating the environment. You're the one setting up who they are and the boundaries and the parameters. So when you said that other leader, the leader's leader, didn't step in, instead of just saying, well, I don't want to be involved in confrontation, let them sort it out. And so I think, this opens up a whole new set of discussion elements, because it sounds like you suffered a bit through that. You suffered from an unsafe place.
Oh, hugely suffered. The level of embarrassment and humiliation that was what I battled, was the shame and the humiliation and the embarrassment. And I remember in one specific situation, and I talk about this very publicly because this was a pivotal moment for me in my journey, with God, is I was thinking, okay, I could walk out this door right now without an explanation, and I would be okay with that. It was that fight or flight, and I was totally okay. And if anybody knows my personality, I stick things out. So the fact that I would even consider I can walk out the door was huge tell to me of where I was at. And so I just was sitting there in what seemed like moments, but was probably only seconds. And I said, okay, Lord, what are we going to do here? And he just ever so gently said, Jen, you can go, you could leave, and I won't love you any less, and I won't bless you any less. If you stay here with me in this moment, in this pain and in this discomfort, he says, I can give you something else here. Yeah. And so I just asked him, I said, okay, here's the deal. Yeah, I'll stay. Can we do it quickly? And will you be with me every step of the way? And his answer was yes. And it wasn't very long after that everything came to an end. But what I got from there is it took me a year to heal from all of the hurt, to come to a place of genuine blessing over that person, to see that person for how God sees them, and to bless the gifts that he had given them. And, to really want good things for them, instead of what we want is, I want retribution. I want someone to see the way that I was treated, but not just me. I was seeing a lot of other people being treated this way. And so to be able to give that right to retribution up in exchange for seeing this person the way that God did and wanting the best for them. That took me a year to get to that place where it held nothing in my heart. There was nothing in my heart that had a hook. But what I got out of that time is what I remember more than anything. So when you ask me, I have to really think back of where I was at in that moment, because who he was for me in that time and who I became in that time frame is you can't put a price on it. That to me was worth it was worth it all. Who he became for me and who I became through that process is everything.
You know, you're touching on so many key elements because I think there is a tendency for us as, Christian leaders. I'm not going to say kingdom leaders, because I think Christian and kingdom leaders aren't the same thing. To me, they're a leader who's leading in a normal way, and it happens to be a Christian. It's not what we're talking about. And the difference would be that I think we often think as Christians that when something goes wrong, it's because something we've done. And therefore, it's on us, and maybe it is. But the way the kingdom sees it, as a kingdom leader, you reframe that. The kingdom reframes problems into a possibility. But more than a possibility, it reframes it into a gift. Speaking to a CEO the other day, and there are huge cash flow shortages. They've been going a long time. And he said, I just don't understand. We're praying, we're trusting the Lord. We don't have what's going on. And I said, what if your lack of cash is a gift, as a kindness from the Lord to get you to reframe and restructure your business? And then when we started to go through that, we found out that some key people in his team don't even believe in what they're doing, or sort of believe in what they're doing. And I'm thinking, I can spot the problem in you, so, and I think what I heard you say is that you let the Lord reframe it. Jenny, you can leave now if you want. That's okay. I'll bless you and love you anyway. But there's a bigger way. What if I could give you a gift through this difficult time? And that's why the scriptures count it pure joy when you meet various trials and temptations. And it goes on because then you'll be perfect, lacking nothing. So it's hard to practice peace when everything's peaceful, right? It's hard to practice your new nature in Christ, love, joy, peace, patience. So hard to practice these when everything's smooth.
Yeah.
So it sounds like for you, there was a reframing the Lord and gave you a choice. Do you want to, because you talked afterwards about the person you became, what changed for you, in that process? And I'm sure it's hard to nail down because you said it a little while ago, but maybe you can take a longer time period. Is what's changed in your leadership development? What is you said you like who you're becoming, or, because who you're becoming and who is for you. What for you shifted when you had that experience? What was the gift? What causes you to count it as joy looking back?
Sure. So the thing that causes me to count it as joy, and the gift in that was his, it is his continuing, unfailing, unendless love for me, his commitment to me to be good. He is good towards me in all things. And when you know that you know that you know that you know that he is good, and you are sure and you are steadfast in his love for you, there's not anything that you can meet that you're on your way to being unshakable. And I would even venture to say that I became so unshakable in who he is that the outcome was I was unshakable in who I am as well. So now along the way, we have other things that come up because we talk about that, right? There's a test to all of those things. So that gets tested. And then several years later, there was a similar situation that happened that I got to walk through it as a
And you
bigger
passed the
person.
test. And pass the
Yes,
test. Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I passed the test.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that leads forward. I really realized too in all of that what I could handle. So if I could handle being accused of things that were just completely against my nature and untrue of who I am, you know, then that goes across into leading a team, because
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing would be to let down a team that you're leading, right? Um, and so that really helped me to step into that space of leading a team, being sure and confident in who he is and who I am in him. So who Jesus is in me and who I am in him.
So that's interesting what you're talking about, because that upgrade that you had in
Mhm.
yourself, that that you started to become, how did that influence your leadership style?
Oh, hugely, because that's where the Arbinger Institute comes in leading with
Yeah.
kindness.
Yeah.
And so it was a step into that leadership doesn't have to be dominating. It doesn't have to be hurtful and destructive. It can be kind.
Mm.
And then so practicing that, and sometimes did it well, sometimes didn't do it well, because there is that balance as well, that when you're leading with kindness, you give away the farm sometimes and you learn that's not a really good thing to do. And
Mm.
so what happened really is back in 2019, when we started doing all of the training with the team, and really some refining key points came in. um, First off, I have this thing of where I think that if I know something, everyone else knows something, right? If
Yeah.
I know it, then surely all of you know it, because
It's obvious to everyone because it's
it's
obvious to me.
obvious, right?
That's right.
That's not true.
Yeah,
So,
that's
and
not true.
I have to remind myself of that to this day. And another key part of it too, which is leading with kindness as well, is everyone has a voice, but not everyone has a say. And so
Mhm.
you give room for everyone to have a voice, but at the end of the day, the decision, as the leader, I hold the right to make the final decision if I see
Yeah.
that it needs to go in another way. And that, knowing that that doesn't devalue someone's voice,
Yeah.
was
Well,
key.
you're blowing up a lot of traditional theories about leadership, especially what I would call more antiquated original ideas of sort of this hierarchical leader that sits at the top of the pyramid and barks down instructions dictatorially. And the tougher you are on people, and if you're too kind, even in modern management, you hear that even from successful leaders. If you're too kind to people, they don't give you their best, right? That's very common thought. So as a kingdom leader, it sounds like we have to redefine what we mean by kindness, because sometimes calling people out to call them up is a kindness, and that's a lot of work on us, right? But that means we have to be very direct, say what the problem is, tell them exactly where they stand. Or sometimes the kindness is to release them to the marketplace where they can flourish and not always feel behind because they're just not keeping up. So kindness needs a broader definition than just be nice. So how's that worked out for you? Because I know this is something you're pretty clear on, the differences. So, and how do you think that, if I can do a double barrel question, how does that contribute to people feeling safe
Mm,
in your team?
yes, that's a good question. So it's a constant it's a constant practice, just like going to the gym, right? of
Right.
of being kind. I know that for me, when I have been treated kindly, it has made me feel like I'm a part of the team and I'm a contributing member to the team. And I also think that when I have had someone say, hear my voice, but then had the final say, that's also created safety, because I know that while we're innovators here on the team, I'm not going to go, just to be extreme, I'm not going to go sell the business out from under somebody's nose without them knowing, right? And so I think that kindness, and then also being a leader that's confident in what the decisions are that you're making for the business and the team, creates that culture of safety where
Mm.
everyone feels that they can contribute, that they have a voice, and that we're also going to go along the right path. That it's not going to be, that it's very intentional, the path that we're going on. Um, it's not just because, or it's not by accident.
Yeah, I think a lot of the two words that we've been talking around is kindness and trust, but
Hmm.
it's really kindness with boundaries,
Yes.
right? It's trust with boundaries. There are some people you can be kind in well, there's a style of kindness. You can be when somebody's owning a problem and you can give them a growth strategy. That's one type of kindness. There's the kindness when you have to contain people because they are being foolish. They're not seeing, they're not owning the problem. They're deflecting. It's not me, it's someone else. I didn't get the email. You don't like me. Whatever the deflections are, it's everybody else but me. So when there's a deflection, you have to use the strategy of containment so that you can create self-awareness. And in the moment, it may feel unkind, but it's actually overall an investment in that person's growth. Because what's the point of containment? To bring about self-awareness so you can put them back into growth mode. So, but when they're in growth mode, it's easier to be kind to people in that growth mode. It's when people, and we all have our foolish moments. It's not like they're just good, growing people and foolish people. So, for you, what have been some of the biggest challenges you faced as a kingdom leader, and how did you overcome that?
Sure. I think it is very much what we're talking about, the kindness with boundaries, and knowing that it is so. In my personal life, I think I do this really well, kindness with boundaries. And you know, and so having it shift over into the business, and so having that become more integrated, that was my biggest challenge, of calling someone out to call them up. um, because and sometimes it's made much easier than other times when you have someone who's, just like you're saying, who's completely unaware or who deflects. It is much easier to really kind of call them out than it is someone who you see maybe really does want to get it, and they just need to be made more self-aware. And so knowing that it's a kindness to be very clear, to be
Mhm.
direct, and to point out exactly what it is, like to give the references of, I mean, you use the example a lot, like you're talking over people in meetings. I'm not sure if you're aware that that comes across, that you don't want to hear other people's, thoughts and ideas. And you have those specific instances that you can refer back to. But then we say, ha, but I know your heart. And I know that's not who you want to be. And so this is what we're going to do. Or, and that really is the kindness, because you are speaking to those who want to be aware. You're speaking to their identity and who they are, and you are calling them up into a bigger, better thing. And people who respond to that, I mean, that's beautiful to watch. It makes it very rewarding, and it makes it easier to do the next time. And um, then the people who are in that containment mode, and you release to the work world, it really is a way to find out, who's going to thrive on the team and who is not meant to be a part of the team. It really is a good way to flesh that out as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think the point is, if doing what you're suggesting, kindness with
Hmm.
boundaries, is a much more kingdom thing in that it's about growing people.
It is.
And it's about growing people before we grow profits. And I think because growing people will produce profits for sure. But if it's otherwise, it's just the preference of the leader. I don't want this. I don't want that. Do this. It's my preference. And it's all about the leader. It's not about the team member. And I know there's a big philosophical divide in leadership management theory around this. And but if you think about it, that's how the Lord is with us, right? Because as we learn from the Lord, that's how we lead our team. Our leadership, our partnership with the Lord is how. But I do want to come back to, in recent times. You want to do what's a big challenge that you faced in recent times as a kingdom leader?
Sure. I think that I mean, there's so many, but one that really was really key for me is, a couple of years ago, we were launching a new product here, in which I was the lead of. And the first couple of meetings with the team that I was leading didn't go to plan. And so we had to have some of those conversations of, hey, I don't know if you're aware, but this is how this came across. And And what happened through that, though, is with the people involved on that team being willing to go through that process, and they were willing to go through the process. And it strengthened the relationships, it strengthened the culture. At the end of that, when we came to the outcome, it was strengthened, the relationships and the culture moving forward. And the product, I mean, it was a really great product. And that came from that process.
Yes, I think I know the product you're referring to, and I would even go as far as to say it might have been the biggest inflection point,
Mm-hmm.
because I think, if you're referring to the impartation product,
Yes.
right? And the impartation was a coaching program where you started coaching people directly, and in that coaching environment, it was that a 12 weeks coaching course, right?
Yes.
So that was a big change from, okay, you're the office manager and you do business administration, to now you're the coach and you're teaching and guiding people
Mm-hmm.
in a way to how to be with the Lord, how to partner with the Lord. And it may sound to some people like they're two different things, but in your world, I know that's one and the same thing. So how did, training and coaching people inform your leadership?
Well,
What did you have to grow?
if I can just go back, so I gave you that part of the story, but what was
Yeah.
happening for me in that is that I was asking the Lord, okay, we're doing this, right? And he said, I'm just asking him about, creating this whole product. Okay, Lord, this is what I'm really supposed to be doing in partnership with you. And his reply to me was, Jenny, all you have to do is love me in the process, and I'll take care of the rest. And so that's how I approached the meetings and the product. And then ultimately the coaching was my first priority, was to love him, to love who he was for me, who he is for me, to love everything about him, right? His love, his joy, his peace, his nature, his goodness, and his kindness towards me. It's not hard. It's not hard to love him. And then out of that love for him would come this coaching program and this the relational aspect with the team. And so we started this coaching program, and one of the things that we said to all of the members when they first started is, we are learning right along with you. And so anybody who teaches, I would imagine, when you're bringing up a topic that you're coaching someone on, you're having the opportunity to relearn that in your own life and at a different way. It might be at a different level than when you first got that revelation, but you are having the opportunity to practice it in your life and to remember it on a daily basis as you're coaching people through it. And so for me, the reward was in coaching people that as they were catching on to the placement that they were placed in Jesus, and that was expanding their hearts to receive from him, that as they were catching on to that, and that was becoming their starting place for everything in life, how we started to do things quickly evolved. So we got to upgrade. We went, as you know, we went from takeaways, because takeaways, asking the members, what is your takeaway from the call? That was too small, because what we realized that they were doing is they were exchanging things. Instead of just taking them away, they were going and they were making exchanges with the Father. So exchanging, fear for love, or hurt for peace, or anxiety for rest, whatever it was, they were exchanging. And the power of the exchange is, once they get from the Father what it is that he wants to give them, then they no longer have to allow anxiety or frustration or stress to press in on them, because they have perfect peace, and they can call up, or as we say, let peace reign in them, instead of fighting off anxiety. I mean, just even the switch in the language there of, Dionne, today I'm struggling, I'm fighting off anxiety. I mean, you get it, just like I said with having a bad day, the more you confess it, the more it happens. So if I'm saying instead, today I let the peace of Jesus the Prince of Peace who dwells in me, I let that peace reign and rule in my life. And every situation and circumstance has to come under that reign of peace in me. And you affect a change by that. You determine the atmosphere. And so as leaders, it's the same thing. We determine the atmosphere and the environment when we partner with these things, and we live in that place with God where we let peace reign, or we let rest be the place that we work from. Starting to get carried away there. Sorry.
No, that's fantastic. I
Okay.
think that the inference here is so huge, because I think maybe people listening to this and say, what do you mean let? And that's the instruction from Scripture. Let the peace of Christ reign, not your peace. Don't try and feel more peaceful. But I love what you said is you shift the atmosphere. So how many people does it take to shift the atmosphere at the office or in the business? Does it take 51%? Kingdom is not a democracy. It's a kingdom. There's a king and he has a domain. And when we align with the king, and you said the Prince of Peace, because you've already settled that if he's the Prince of Peace, then peace is a ruling power. So in other words, nothing can stand against it. So people say, I live in such a toxic environment at work. My boss is so toxic. We hear this word, the toxic aspects of what they're doing. And the reality is, what if you partnered with the Lord and shifted that environment? What if you became the touch point of heaven? Now, of course, you have a different situation because you have an entire team all doing that. So it's a lot easier. But, if you're the only one doing that, that's an interesting discussion now, because you kind of have to be part of a community of people doing that, So let me just cycle back to, because I want to tackle about how you found community of like-minded people and leaders, but I also want to then go into, so how do you take these beautiful upstairs ideas you were sharing and create a high-performance team downstairs? Because a lot of people go, oh, that's really sweet and it's fluffy and nice, but I need stuff done. I need, we've got to get that product out by Thursday, etc. And I need this done really well. I need to hire the best people, and I need to have a high performance team. So that's where I'd like to land the conversation. But just to take a detour for a minute, because I think finding community of like-minded people who think the way you do, I imagine was not an easy process.
No, it wasn't. It was a very, I felt at times, solitary experience. And again, one that I wouldn't trade, because who the Father became for me and who I got to become in that time is worth every moment of it. It was a time of really of just some deep learning with him and how to process with him. It really set me up for where I am in life now, and even for the coaching program that we launched several years ago. It set me up to be in that place of partnership with him, to know how to process with him, and so I wouldn't trade that for anything. However, I did have a request from him in that I remember just feeling like I'm on my own here. And it wasn't a negative feeling. It just was, I'm on my own. Surely I cannot be the only person who is discovering this about you, who's walking in this way with you. I was the only person I knew about, but sure, again, remember, surely if I know it, it's obvious to everybody. And so I just was continuing, and I really feel that Brilliant, specifically the people in Brilliant, are God's gift to me for friends, because I really wanted and asked for like-minded and hearted people who are just completely wrapped up in who he is, solely convinced about who he is and who we are in him, and traveling together, in that growth and development, in that journey of growth and development in the kingdom. So I really believe that Brilliant is his kind gift to me for friends and community.
Yeah, I'm always thinking of Jesus said, Father, I have received those that you've given me. And sometimes we want to receive someone else. And they'll listen, but I'm giving you this person, and I'm giving you this group.
Yes.
And so receiving those the Lord has given you is a very peaceful thing to be doing.
It is.
So I'd love to get back to the high performance team aspect. What strategies do you feel that really builds a culture of innovation, a sense of ownership in the organization? How do you empower team members to act like owners and take leadership in their roles and not just be employees? What is that switch, and how do you manage that in your team?
Well, it all begins from the hiring process, as you know, that hiring process of we're really looking for a right fit with people. And so we go through an extensive hiring process of 4 interviews, and those interviews can be 2+ hours long. And what we're doing is we are really getting to know people in those times, and we're ascertaining where their drive, their approach, the way they think about things. We're looking for cultural fit. So we're drilling down to find out if they are going to be a good fit for us, but also, are we going to be a good fit for them? Because it is,
Yeah.
and I think that's where it starts, is we're not looking to hire someone that only we're going to benefit. Our goal is that they will benefit as well. As we say, is if you ever leave Brilliant, we want you to be the smartest person in the room, because we invest heavily in our people. And so it begins with the interview process. And then when they come on team, we have these building blocks. So as you know, we have leadership training, weekly, where we introduce the team to the most, usually this is your role, the most up-to-date technology, so that they have all of the tools available to them, but also the training practices, and that we utilize here at Brilliant, and we'll revisit them. So
Yeah.
we have these concepts that we use for innovation, a shape up project with the thin slices. So instead of boiling the ocean, instead of taking a huge project and trying to work out every detail that you would need, for instance, to launch a product, we take the thinnest possible slice and we start there. So you just take a bite-sized piece, and then it builds, every couple of weeks you do a slice until you come to the end of that project, and then you continue to Kaizen it. So it doesn't ever stop. The innovation doesn't stop at all here
Never
on the
does.
team.
Yep.
No, no. And then we have deep work, which really helps the team to really focus in and to work on the business instead of in the business. It's something that is not a part of their daily workload. We give them 4 hours of uninterrupted work. So no email notifications, no Slack notifications, no phone calls or texts unless it's an emergency. And that is required, that each team member do 1 deep work session per week to focus on the business and pushing and moving the business forward. It could be a new product. It could be, utilizing a new tool. It could be refining the processes. And that is another part that helps them to keep the innovation going. And then also, as you know, we have the cognitive control. I really think that a team that has cognitive control over their workload is a highly productive team. And so we have our Q book, which we use in order to record our to-do lists. And having the Q book, you can reference meeting notes, you have your to-do list, but it also, people become known for doing what they say they're going to do because they're recording, and they have cognitive control over their work. So those are just a few. There's so many. As you know, we have, 40 that we have.
40. I think, but the team has a very impressive performance result around projects,
Yes.
right? So how many projects have you done in the last few years that you've been tracking, say over the last 2 or 3 years?
Right.
And how many of them have been on budget, on time?
Thank you. That's a great question. So we've done, it's between 70 and 80 projects that we've done over the last couple of years. And not one of those projects have been late, not even an hour late. So we have a day every week, a pitch and a presentation day on Wednesday, and not one of our projects has been even an hour late. Um, so,
Wow.
yeah.
So it sounds like two of the big best practices that have really built the team is weekly leadership training. Is
Hmm.
that's half an hour, right? So it's
Yes.
just pick one thing and invest in their leadership across the board. I think normally leadership training is done in the top structure of an organization, not throughout the organization. So that's a radical thought, doing that every week, and it's pretty compulsory, right? Unless
Yes.
there's real reason not to be there. Um, the second thing you've talked about is that you've got innovation happening at every level of the organization. So it's not like, well, all the innovations coming from the senior team. So everybody's innovating, and people get to be taught how to innovate, and you gave them time once a week for 4 hours in deep work sessions to really bring a contribution. And so this thing about being able to bring a contribution that matters to a company, what do you think that does for team members, and what have you observed? What the meaningful, how when we bring meaning to people's jobs and tell them their lives and their contributions matter. A lot of people will say that hypothetically, but you've got a practical way to actually do that and recognize that. What do you think that does for a culture in a team?
I think it does a couple of things. I think it creates a sense of, well, first off, it creates an energy within the culture that anyone can have a good idea and can expand on that good idea.
Hmm.
So then the team becomes invested in the business and they begin to think like owners because they can change the trajectory of the business with one, with innovation. They can change the whole trajectory of the business. And I, as the leader, I don't have to be the person to bring that innovation that changes the
Hmm.
trajectory. And so we celebrate, we make them heroes of the story. We celebrate our team when they have done that. We make them the hero of the story. So, if someone were to innovate something that would change the trajectory, we'd say, you know, Dionne, you're the hero of this story. And then so there's the recognitions, there's the awareness that they they know that they have made a contribution that has really contributed to the business moving forward.
Yeah, that's amazing. So when you did that innovation of that new product, did you feel that you were made the hero of that story? And if so, what did that mean to you?
For
How
sure.
did that how did
Mhm.
that change your commitment to the organization?
For sure. I really did feel like the hero of the story, and it was I felt very accomplished. It built, an accomplishment within me that when the next project comes up, that I could do it there as well because I did it here. And so I bring that forward. And it's just like, we talked about Simon Sinek in the beginning, that all of these build on each other to come to an outcome. So
Yeah,
yes is the answer. I did feel like the hero of the story, and it also built the confidence in me that I could do this again.
great. Well, as is the becoming the tradition on this podcast, is that we like to end with, "What's your testimony of the Lord?" I.e., what do you know that you know that you know about the Lord and what He's like? What is your testimony of the Lord?
I touched on it, and it's just that he's so good.
Hmm.
He is so undeniably good. And if there's ever a situation that I am feeling like is not in my best interest or for my good, then I know that I have to go back to him because he
Hmm.
is good. And he's always been good to me. There's not a moment in my life, if I look back on it, that he was not there with me. I might not have known that he was there at that time, but as I look back on my life, I can see that his goodness is the thread through my life to where I'm at today.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to give every guest the opportunity to say, just wrap it up with, what is it your organization does and how can people learn more about it? And we'll post links and so forth,
Sure.
and attach it to this. But just give people a little sense of what you do and where they can learn more.
Well, we are a brilliant movement of kingdom activators. And that new website is coming soon. For now, people can go to brilliant.church and learn more about the movement there. And if they would like resources about the movement, they can go to brilliantperspectives.com.
Yeah. And what will the new website be?
It will be brilliantmovement.com. Easy enough to remember.
Easy to remember. Brilliantmovement.com,
Yes.
coming soon to a website near you.
To a website.
Okay, very cool. Jenny, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking time, hanging out with us. It's been great to, I hope the audience got to know you a little bit. And I know you gave so many, treasures and moments of pure gold throughout that process, but also sharing your life with us and your own journey. And so what would be your word of encouragement to people who are starting off in kingdom leadership, people who are trying to transition from separating their lives and their spiritual lives and bring them into one thing, their work lives and their personal lives with the Lord? What would be your one encouragement to them?
Yes. To make it all a delight, to really delight in the learning and to choose one thing to focus on. I think when we are integrating and we are, we're growing and we're developing, we tend to find 5 to 10 things that we can focus on or concepts that we can implement. And I would really encourage folks to choose one thing that the Holy Spirit's highlighting, focus on that, and take your time to build in that with Him. But most importantly, to delight in the learning and the discovery of it, because it will lead to something beautiful.
Oh, I love that. Start with delight. Thank you, Jenny. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
It was a lot of fun.
We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you'd like to hear more of this kind of content or submit a question for us to answer live, visit us at dionnevanzyl.com or click the link in the episode description. As always, thanks for listening.